Hey guys, Elise Quevedo here. Today I am joined by Will Beattie, co-founder and chief technology officer at KADDRA. Hi Will, how are you today?
Hi Elise, very good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm very excited to talk to you as you're in an industry which is really on demand. So let's get to it. We all know that people are now using their cell phones and the smart devices more than any other device on the planet. Do you believe that businesses are ready to respond to this new behavior?
I think on the aggregate, no, definitely not. I mean, businesses tend to be doing things the way they've been doing things for years, which is having websites, supporting desktop, all of these things. So despite mobile, being the dominant channel now for a number of years, I don't think it's on the radar of a lot of businesses. I think, as I said before, they tend to be doing things the traditional ways, tend to look at desktop first, and almost compromise when it comes to a mobile experience. And there's a few reasons for that. One is the cost. So in mobile development is inherently more expensive than web development to do it right. And I think a lot of businesses are afraid of that. But also it comes down to mindset. Mobile is a change that the usage rates are probably very high in younger generations, and that tends to, in the boards and executives teams at a lot of businesses, they tend to use their own experiences to drive some of the digital strategy. Meaning, I don't use a mobile phone to book taxis. I use the phone, so why would anyone else? It's unfortunately it's a sad effect of people using their own experiences to drive strategy instead of looking at the data. So no, to answer the question, I think businesses are definitely not ready to respond, and they, when they choose to, they may be too late because it's changing so quickly. And mobile, now is the dominant channel, but voice is rapidly, evolving as the next channel. You've got wearables and all these other devices. So it's going to be, if you're not on the train now, you're gonna miss out, I think.
Wow, thank you so much, Will, for being quite honest about this, because it's true. Even though every day as human beings we're using this all the time, businesses seem to forget that this is what we need to do. There is a demand about technically commerce that goes in our cell phones. So then let's talk about KADDRA. KADDRA claims to be a mobile-first technology, and we know that you are a true advocate of mobile technology. Why do you believe that app commerce has a strong chance to make e-commerce a thing of the past?
I think ultimately it comes down to convenience. So for the average customer, the average person using the phone, when you pick up an app, you're already logged in, you've got your credit card stored there securely. There's nothing more secure than a mobile phone. If you lose it, you can always turn it off, you can track it, you can do all these things. So it's much more secure than any other device. And so the number of steps, the number of gates that you have to go through to achieve what you want to achieve is much less on a mobile phone than it is on desktop or even a mobile website. And it comes down to the underlying technology, where with mobile apps you are, as I say, you're always logged in. There's always a context of who you are. It's totally secure, so it's much easier. Generally on a mobile website, you might receive an email. You click on the link, it dumps you into a page. You might go and add something to your cart, and then you go to checkout, and boom, oh, you've got to log in. Now, if you're like me, I mean, I've got about 1,000 different logins and passwords, and I can't remember them all. Generally, if I can't remember, or if I have a failure of trying to log in, I lose interest. So I go and do something else. So a mobile app removes those barriers to achieving the task that people want to do. It's a concept. There's a great book about it. It's called, jobs to be done. So, as humans, we have jobs that we need to do on a daily basis. It could be, buy some flowers for the wife. It could be, make a bank transfer to a friend or to a business that you owe. These are the jobs that you need to do, and where there's friction in achieving those jobs, you drop off and you forget to do them, or move on to something else, because there's between a mobile device and desktop and everything else, there's so many things vying for your attention that if it doesn't work perfectly the first time, you're going to drop off. And I think that's the distinct advantage that mobile has over desktop and mobile websites.
I definitely have to agree with you, Will. And I love that you mentioned, for example, banking, because I had an experience yesterday where, of course, not all applications, and I'm sure you'll give us some details later, have not been customized for cell phone devices. And I had to use the desktop version yesterday, and it annoyed me so much because I had forgotten my login details, like you said. From here, you can shop, you can do your banking, you can check your emails, you can use any application for social. And every time I now have to go onto my laptop, unless it's work related, I actually get annoyed. And I think this is maybe what businesses sometimes don't understand, that we are all consumers first. And as consumers, we like it as easy and as seamless as possible. And when we now go back to a desktop or a laptop, we've kind of been trained to use what's in here. And like you said, all the passwords are not needed, because now also we can use the thumbprint ways very quickly for security purposes, for banking, for example. And I think we need to maybe educate more businesses so that they understand the difference of, if you're going to invest money, or if you've got a certain amount of budget and you're limited, what's better, or what are the differences? For example, KADDRA focuses on SMEs. So why would the small businesses want to have their own digital ecosystem instead of using the large aggregators like you've spoken about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a number of reasons. One is cost. So the aggregators are fantastic. You can set up your Amazon store, your Redmart store, your Lazada store, and have a profitable business. However, you're giving 30-35% to the aggregator, but that's not all you're giving them. And I think a lot of people don't understand this, but you're actually giving them all of the data. So you do not own the customer data with the aggregator. So if you have your Amazon store, it's not your customer, it's the Amazon customer. And Amazon will, and any other aggregator will market to that customer as if they're theirs, which they are, and can rightly, create a marketplace for people to bid and advertise, your competitors to advertise right alongside you. That's their whole business model. The same with the food delivery aggregators. I believe and know a few restaurants here in Singapore where they may partner with one aggregator, and that actually brings customers to the aggregator. But once the customers are in, they're no longer the restaurant's customers. They're now the aggregator's customers, and then they're competing with everybody else, and almost it kind of democratizes all of the different businesses, but the SME is losing what is generally the biggest value of an SME is that customer relationship. And if you don't own the data, you cannot build a customer relationship. So that's the trade-off. So it's, you know, the 35% plus, you know, losing the customer data. And for the short term, it may work. If you know, want to make a quick buck, you might, you know, have some product to move and sell it, and that's fine. But in the long term, is it a long-term strategy? If you don't actually you don't even know who your customers are and don't own the data, then the value of that business is not very high. The other one is control. So, you know, as I said before, once you're in an aggregator's platform, you have no control over your brand. You have no control over what your customers see and what they do. And with your own ecosystem, you can control every aspect of it. You can well, firstly, you own the data, so you truly own the customer data. You can use that data to then better personalize the service or the offering, and really, you know, provide an amazing experience for the customer. Because, you know, I'm a consumer, I use Amazon. It's you search for one type of product, you'll get 10,000 results. You know, who has the time to go through and filter and figure out which product's the right one? And then not even that, you have the same product sold by multiple different partners, suppliers, and it's, how do you know which supplier is the right one to choose? It's, from the consumer point of view, it's actually not a great experience anymore, because it's so deep and so vast, and there's so much noise that trying to do a simple thing like buy a toy for your child becomes a 1-2 hour long in-depth research that you have to do to get it right. And that's I don't think that's right long term, and customers will, you know, I think they prefer curation, which doesn't exist in the aggregators. They try to do a recommendation, but it's very the relevance is never really that good, I don't think. So yeah, and the smaller businesses can be very focused, very curated, and ultimately remove the noise for the consumers, which will have them coming back, because people don't want lots of choice. It's a myth. It's a myth. People want 3 options and, you know, want to choose from those. They don't want to, you know, research 3,000 different options for whatever it is you're doing. I think that the travel industry, which is obviously hurting now, is one of the worst for this. I mean, if you try and try and find a hotel in Spain, for instance. I mean, if you've never been to Spain, I mean, it'll take you a day to research it. You know, go through TripAdvisor and all these customer comments, a lot of them which are fake, and you have to try and somehow figure out if the hotel is going to be any good or not. People don't have time to do that, and I think, yeah, they just want to be told, okay, here's what we think is the right product or service for you. Away you go.
I love what you've shared, and you've given 2 examples, which is, for example, restaurants and travel, which after this COVID-19 and the period that we've had has been very relevant. When you mentioned the restaurants, it reminded me how they were some of the ones that, although they shut down, they had delivery services, but through the aggregators, through the third parties, such as Deliveroo or Uber Eats or Just Eat. And what you said was spot on, because I think businesses don't understand that they're giving their data and their customers to another platform. And you get lost by giving yourself to one of these aggregators, which of course is great because it's extra income. You're just becoming one of the thousands or one of the hundreds in your area. Whereas maybe I thought, okay, so I want to have pizza today and I want this place. And I go onto the application and I go, oh, but before finding that, oh, here are the top options today. And then now I'm being distracted and diverted to somebody else's brand. Whereas when you have your own ecosystem, like you mentioned, then it's all about you. It is not about somebody else, how you trust somebody else. We care so much. I think businesses or SMEs especially, they think, let's be part of this ecosystem that is somebody else's and be the tiny little voice instead of being your own big voice and saying like, hey, this is who we are. We have our own platform. Come and get us here if you want our product, and you will not be distracted by 50 other brands that are going to come out before me. So you had a great point, which comes down again to educating people and businesses about the benefits. So, and you just shared some great benefits of mobile commerce. And of course, it is not magic. This is definitely part of a business strategy. So Will, what else is needed to truly succeed then once you have your mobile platform in place?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, we always at KADDRA, the key, and we always remind customers of this, is content. It's always content. So whether that content's in your own ecosystem or on social or on your website, it's all about content. And I think this is one thing that most businesses actually struggle with the most, is creating and generating that content. You know, whether it's visual content, written content, video content, it's all relevant, but it's totally necessary. So you have to, having your ecosystem is great, but if it's stale, if the content is stale, if the offering is stale and doesn't change, often you will lose people, because people like to explore new things, they like to be proposed new things, they like to read. Still, some people like to read, and you know, definitely like to see visual content. I mean, you know, the success of Instagram goes to show that, you know, people are all about images, about you know, visual content, as opposed to writing. And you know, businesses have to adapt to that and make sure that they have a capability to produce that content, which is not, you know, it's not impossible, but it's also not easy either. It requires a dedication, a commitment of resources to do that. And I think there's you know, maybe the brand content and educational content, but then the products themselves. You know, one of the amazing things about mobile commerce versus web commerce is you can really understand what people are looking at, how long they spend looking at certain products, and this should be fed back into the business, where they can look at the overall offering and go, okay, this is our customer base, but only 20% are actually interested in our product offering. So there's two things you can do there. Either you need to start marketing to a different demographic, the one that's, you know, that's not interacting with you, or you need to change your offering. So if you find, you know, that you've got a customer base full of millennials when you assumed that they weren't, and a lot of businesses, you know, make this mistake, then you either go off and find, you know, the customers in your preferred demographic, or you've got to adapt the products and services around your demographic. I would say adapting your products and services is probably going to be an easier and cheaper way to go than trying to then attract the right customers.
True. Yeah. I agree. Then it's all about a balance. I think many people think that whether it's social media or an application or a website, that's their magic bullet. That, oh, I'm gonna create this, or I'm going to pay for this service, and the customers come. Well, not really. It's like you build your store, but now you need to promote it. You need to, again, share the content, and not just once, but you need to be consistent. There needs to be a flow of information that is mixed. Not all sales and not all educational. It's always a balance, hence why you do need the strategy and then understand what is good for your brand. So I agree with everything you've said today, Will. And of course, we live in a mobile world. We cannot deny that every person, even as I'm doing this, I'm holding my smartphone because I am so attached to this thing. I just, wherever I go, it's natural for me to have this whole held in my hands. So it is hard to walk on the street and not see someone on their device. Either you're listening to music, or you're making a call, you're texting, you're using mobile applications, social media. And even though we have these facts in front of us, Will, many businesses still have a fear of going digital. Why, or what do you think are the biggest challenges as to why businesses don't take faster action? Why do they sit back and wait?
It's a great question. Look, fundamentally, it's a people problem. Every digital transformation fails. Most digital transformations fail because of people. People don't want to change. As much as, you know, most people, at least what they put out on social media and everything is spontaneous and all these sorts of things, it's not true. People like to know what they do on a daily basis. They like routine, and it's the organization as well, the organizational culture there, which often doesn't allow that change, because it might mean, oh, you know, someone or a team has to do something differently, or, you know, has to adapt, or has to learn a new system, or has to do this. And it creates, you know, there's a huge amount of resistance to any type of change. I've been through some very dramatic organizational changes, you know, led by technology, and, you know, it's amazing what people will cling to, even though the facts are there, and it's absolutely, you know, without a doubt the right thing to do. People just don't want to change. I think that's probably the biggest thing. But also, you know, I think a lot of businesses, despite all the data that's available to them, they don't interpret it. They don't interpret it, or rather don't use it. So they may have a report, a data, and we with our prospects, we share a lot of insights and data on mobile usage in globally and in Asia. But then people still ignore it. They say, so even if you show them the facts that the majority of mobile commerce now in Singapore, or majority of e-commerce in Singapore, is done on a mobile device, people still believe that a desktop is the right thing. And it's, you know, it's unfortunately the reality of humans and behavior, where they don't want to believe it, because it's scary. You know, it's scary. It's like, oh, but we've invested so much into our website and all this, you know, everything we've done there, you know, to think, oh, we've got to adapt, and we've got to spend money, and we've got to retrain people. There's a big resistance to that. So I think, you know, not looking at the data properly, or not using the data properly, or not wanting to see the reality comes into it a lot. And as I say, we face this on a daily basis. And yeah, I mean, going back to an original point, you've got, you know, in organizations, there's obviously the millennials and the Zoomers now, I think you call them, in the lower levels, but the decision-making team is still, you know, still kind of stuck in old thinking, and you know, as I said before, they're using their own personal experience to make decisions on digital strategies. So should a 60-year-old who can't work an iPhone be taking a decision on digital strategy? Probably not, but unfortunately that's the case, and it goes right the way to the board. You know, boards ultimately have have the accountability for this. And on boards especially, there generally is nobody with any digital experience on boards. Boards are generally made up of accountants and lawyers, so there's no one there with any digital strategy, and generally there's nobody there under 50. So despite the business, most businesses are thinking, how do we sell, how do we stay relevant with this changing generation, the decision makers are so far removed from that generation that they stick to what they know, and ultimately their businesses will fail, for sure, because if you can't figure out how to sell to millennials and Zoomers, and you can't adapt to what they need, because consumers now are more demanding than they've ever been. Everything is accessible from a mobile phone now. They expect it. So the brands and businesses that don't adapt to this and can't see it, they ultimately will fail, because nobody will want to do business with them. Who's going to want to walk into a retail store in 10 years' time? No one. And who's going to want to go on a website? I mean, as you say, as I say, I mean, when it comes to personal things, the desktop, it seems funny to do personal things. It's, my phone, my iPad, that's where I do any sort of personal, commerce, shopping, booking, whatever it may be. Desktop is a work tool in this day and age, I think.
Once again, I want to thank you for your honesty, because you touched on a little bit of a sensitive subject for many of the old school kind of people, which is, the boards of companies, should just be 50 plus or 60 plus because it means respect. But there is a saying that I love to quote, which is, it is not the strongest or the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is able to adapt the most. And I think you're right in saying that sometimes it's this old school thinking, how can you expect someone that maybe doesn't understand the technology to actually give the strategy? Because in companies, it goes from the top down, that knowledge trickles down. Maybe you have millennials or digital people that are ready to do something, but the orders from the top say, not yet, let's wait. Because there is nothing wrong with mixing the old way of doing things with the new. It's about merging both. And for that, we need a better understanding. And that means things do need to change now. And there are only maybe a handful of companies that are allowing under 50s on the boards of directors. And that's still, I think, that it's going to take a few years to be fixed, of course, but it's something that needs to be spoken about. And there is no disrespect to anyone that is on the older generation, neither on the young one, because we both need to learn from each other. I grew up without technology. My first cell phone, I was 19 years old. Right now, that is like ancient if you don't have a cell phone by the age of 2. So I understand the old way of doing things and the new way, but we have to continue to adapt. We need to be open-minded, and we need to understand that what we know today won't be valid in 2 years' time, for example. It will be a skill we have, but we need to continue adapting to what is on the market. Applications, what you guys are doing at KADDRA right now didn't exist 5 years ago or 6 years ago in this kind of level. What I do now didn't exist when I was at school or even 15, 16 years ago. And if we didn't adapt, neither of us would be doing what we do now. And another thing that I love is that KADDRA claims that business owners should focus on their existing customers rather than only looking for new ones. This is something that caught my eye because I'm a very big believer in this. So could you tell us your thoughts on this and why that is?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it comes back to data. You'll notice a theme that data tends to drive a lot of what we think and what we do. Um, but yeah, I mean, it comes down to the cost. So the cost of acquiring a customer versus the cost of acquiring a customer can cost up to 5 times more than retaining a customer. And then increasing retention by just 5% can increase your profits from 25% to 95%. So working just a little bit on retention can have a dramatic increase on the bottom line. And really it comes down to the fact that you have a relationship with the customer. So trying to sell to that customer is much easier proposition than selling to someone cold. And the numbers here, I mean, I think to an existing customer, the success rate is 60 to 70% versus a cold lead is 5 to 20%, right? So who would you rather, if you're in business and you want to sell to someone, who would you rather sell to? Someone who has a probability of buying from you 60 to 70% of the time, or 5 to 20%? I mean, it's really a no-brainer. And I think part of the challenge that the businesses have is that doing the retention it's not much fun. It's not very sexy. You can't do big campaigns, and marketing teams love big budgets. They love to do campaigns. They love big numbers. Love to drive traffic and all these sorts of things. There's none of that in retention. Retention is just, really, it comes down, a lot of it comes down to your customer service or customer success teams just doing, providing a good service, reaching out and doing this. So it's not sexy to do, but the difference it can make on the bottom line is huge. And especially because the cost of acquiring a customer now is getting higher and higher. If your strategy is to fight against your competitors on Google search engine or Facebook or whatever, the cost is only going up, and so you're spending a fortune to acquire that customer. So why not then spend? You don't have to spend a fortune. In fact, you don't have to spend very much to retain them, and ultimately you've got a really good chance of getting more sales out of them. And I think that the focus is for a lot of businesses is on the wrong thing, because they're trying to drive bigger numbers, new customers through the door, as opposed to retaining them.
Sure, 100% agreed. And I think maybe people need to think differently and remember we are all consumers and customers first. So please, when you do your customer service or customer experience, put yourself on the other side and think, is this service or this journey something that I would personally enjoy? Because if the answer is no, then people are not going to like the product or they will not come back. So customer experience is something that is being spoken a lot, but not many people are actually applying it. So I feel, as always, education is the key when it comes to anything digital or anything that is service related, because there shouldn't be much difference when we take offline service to online, but we seem to have a disconnect sometimes. Oh, because it's online, it doesn't matter so much. But it is, because behind this screen that Will and I are both here today, and behind this, when I use my applications, there's a human being. So treat every customer as a human being and not just a number or a dollar sign, and maybe there will be a little bit more retention. And I'm so thankful to have spoken to you today, Will, because KADDRA seems to answer many of the challenges we mentioned earlier, and I'm sure I have more questions for you today, but I've just got one more, which is, if people want to find out more about KADDRA, then where can they go? How do they find you?
Yeah, sure. So the best place to find us is on our website, which is www.kaddra.com. You can find
Okay.
us. You can chat to us. There's a live chat there. It's not a chat bot. You can.
The real human
So
being, right? If they go to the chat, they will chat to someone from the team.
it's a real human. Yeah.
Okay. Awesomeness. So there you have it, guys. Loads of insights shared today. I will definitely share the link below to go to KADDRA.com. Thank you, Will, so much for your time. Much appreciated. Until next time.
Thanks a lot.